The other big breaking news that's coming in is coming from New York at the moment, where the United Nations has adopted a resolution to expel Russia from the UNHRC, the United Nations Human Rights Commission. India has abstained from voting on the suspension of Russia from the UNHRC. And remember, in this sense, an abstention would have gone against the Russians because only votes for and against were counting. So Russia is out of the United Nations Human Rights Commission. So a big setback there to Vladimir Putin. Imran Khan gets a setback in the Supreme Court today of Pakistan, and Russia is out of the UNHRC. India abstaining from that UN vote. Listen in.
India has abstained on the resolution adopted in the General Assembly today. We do so for reasons of both substance and process. Since the inception of the Ukrainian conflict, India has stood for peace, dialogue, and diplomacy. We believe that no solution can be arrived at by shedding blood and at the cost of innocent lives. If India has chosen any side, it is the side of peace, and it is for an immediate end to violence. We continue to remain deeply concerned at the worsening situation and reiterate our call for end to all hostilities. When innocent human lives are at stake, diplomacy must prevail as the only viable option. Recent reports of civilian killings in Bushehr are deeply disturbing. We have unequivocally condemned these killings and support the call for an independent investigation.
So India deciding to abstain from that vote at the United Nations. A strong message, though, going from the world community to Vladimir Putin today. That's the big breaking news that's coming in. 93 countries have voted against Russia at the UNGA to keep Russia out of the United Nations Human Rights Commission. Huge setback for the Russians. What does this mean for Vladimir Putin? What exactly will Putin now do? Well, earlier I spoke to a very special guest. Rebecca Koffler is a Russia-born US intelligence expert who served as a Russian doctrine and strategy specialist in defense intelligence and has written an important book, Putin's Playbook, revealing Russia's secret plan to defend America. And I began by asking Rebecca, if Putin was ready to strike again, would he continue to escalate, or would he regroup and attack in a big way? What exactly was Putin's plan now in Ukraine? Listen in to Rebecca Koffler.
President Putin is not ready to retreat at all. This is just not something that he does. His personality and life experience are such that he has learned he only has to fight back when he's cornered. Things have not gone well or according to plan, according to Vladimir Putin. And at this point, you're correct. He is regrouping and trying to figure out his next step. He's not retreating.
You're saying he's not retreating, he's only regrouping. But as a Putin watcher, could this be his last stand? There are those who are suggesting that next time this year, Vladimir Putin won't be around in Russia. He cannot afford to lose this battle in Ukraine. Do you subscribe to that view that in a way you could see a more desperate Putin in the weeks ahead?
Oh, he's definitely desperate because, like I said, he miscalculated the Ukrainians' will to fight, President Zelensky's leadership. He underestimated how much support the West will provide in terms of weaponry and also moral support from financial institutions withdrawing and companies withdrawing from Russia, such as Visa, MasterCard, Starbucks, you name it. But his life experience is such is that when he's cornered like a rat, which is a specific experience that he had when he was a child, he has to fight back. And what I would expect right now, a nuclear escalation from Putin to make this conflict go down, de-escalate. It's a specific doctrine that was developed on Putin's orders, and that is what I expect to see next from him.
You know, you're saying something very important, because I've seen even in your book, you believe there are 5 major instruments in Putin's playbook. You include space warfare, cyber warfare, military options such as escalation, and the nuclear option, as well as espionage. You seem to be suggesting that Mr. Putin will use the nuclear option to threaten the West and will continue to do so. Am I correct?
You are absolutely correct. This is exactly the type of situation that the escalate to de-escalate doctrine was developed for. Remember, Putin's ultimate concern and his fear is that Ukraine, if he does not control it, Ukraine will become part of NATO. And it's not acceptable to Putin because the distance between St. Petersburg, the second largest city in Moscow, and NATO forces has reduced from the Cold War to today from 1,000 miles to 100 miles. That is shorter than the distance between Washington and New York. And that is unacceptable for Putin and any military commander. So this is why you see him fighting with bringing everything, to the table, including targeting civilians. He is not playing by any kind of rules. He's not observing the rules of armed conflict. He is plowing through like a madman, but he is rational. He's not mentally stable. This is how he fights. This is how the Russian warfare has been for centuries.
So you're not taking his comments at face value when he suggests that the Russians are virtually giving up any thought of a regime change or going into Kiev. They are willing to sit and negotiate a possible settlement. You don't believe any of that. You believe that Putin is playing ultimately for control of Ukraine, come what may.
So strategic deception is something that the Russian government does at the state level. Every single diplomatic action, military action is accompanied by a program intended to deceive the adversary, to confuse the Western governments, and to really make the opponent really distracted about what Putin is doing and confused, right? So I do not believe these negotiations are done with genuine intentions. He is simply trying to figure out his next move. No, decapitation of the Zelensky government does not present itself as viable right now. But remember, Putin's assassins groups, the Wagner group and the Kadyrovцы, are still on the hunt to capture and kill Zelensky. So Putin is playing for time.
You're giving one view, of course, of Putin, and we must tell our viewers that. But there will be those who will say that at the end of the day, Putin is only exploiting the weakness that he has seen in NATO, that he has seen in the United States, particularly post-Afghanistan, and that he wants to restore an element of Russian sphere of influence, at least, across countries like Ukraine that were once part of the Soviet Union. And therefore, he is working according to his vision of Russian nationalism. That all said and done, he is a staunch nationalist. We may call him authoritarian, despotic, madman, as some even call him, but he is, to his supporters in particular, a strong, staunch Russian nationalist. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that. And I wrote about this in the book. While he is an authoritarian, he's also a nationalist. He's not madman in a sense that he is psychiatrically ill. No, he is marching, executing his Putin's playbook, which is the title of my book, exactly because he senses that there's division within NATO. Remember, old Europe and new Europe leadership don't view the Russian threat through the same prism. It is the countries like the Baltics, like Poland, who have experienced the threat and the domination of the USSR. They are more realistic and sober about the threat presented by Putin, but not France and Germany. Remember, Germany is not even, and many others, don't even contribute full 2% to collective defense of NATO, and they're still very dependent on the Russian gas. So you're very correct. Putin chose very specifically this moment when he senses that the United States is also led by a weak commander-in-chief, and he believed that he could win this fight.
So in conclusion, since we spoke about the US president just now, given Joe Biden's controversial remark, for God's sake, this man cannot remain in power on the one side. On the other side, someone who was a KGB agent in East Germany when the Berlin Wall fell, who perhaps still feels a sense of a desire to restore Russia's pride and glory. How do you see the end game playing out now, given the fact that, given what America has said, given where Putin, as you said, is coming from? What is the end game that you are seeing in Ukraine?
So this is a battle of the wills between Putin, as you said, the former KGB operative, ruthless, cold-blooded. Next one is Zelensky. He is a new leader of Ukraine who views himself as a world's freedom fighter. He is not giving up either. And the U.S. commander-in-chief, who appears to be confused, and he's walking back the words that he just said, regime change, which Putin heard loud and clear, and he already suspected that the United States is pursuing a policy of regime change. So who is going to win? At this point, my assessment is that this is going to be a long, grinding, protracted, low-intensity conflict. And for the next 6 to 12 months, no one is going to win. As long as we support Zelensky and Ukraine with weaponry, Russia cannot win. As long as Putin has his very nuanced, sophisticated, asymmetric strategy that I described in my book that you mentioned, we cannot win either, at least in the sense of victory that we believe in. So just like we withdrew from Afghanistan after 20 years, even though we achieved military victory early on within a year or two, we had to withdraw because we couldn't really achieve victory fully. Right. So this is going to be the same thing, at least for the next 6 to 12 months.
Well, that is an interesting forecast that you are giving there, Rebecca. Clearly, you seem to believe that Putin may have retreated for now, but he is regrouping. And you believe that Vladimir Putin is not going anywhere in a hurry because he is someone who isn't going to give up so easily. For giving us an insight into the mind of the Russian president, I appreciate your joining us there, Rebecca from Washington. Thank you so much, Rebecca Koffler, for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.